Take their seats at the dais. It is time for the regular meeting of the Howell Township Board of Education to come to order. Shall we have a roll call, please? Mr. Gurman.
Present.
Dr. Jeffrey.
Here.
Dr. Lowe.
Present.
Mrs. Malley is running late, but will be here shortly. Mrs. Mangano.
Here.
Mrs. Okerson.
Present.
Mr. Thor is out of the area for business this evening. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Bongiovanni.
Present.
Please rise to salute the flag and then remain standing while Zoya Rizvi blesses us with a rendition of the national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Hang on a sec. Stay right there.
How many of us would have had that courage in second grade?
Wow.
I don't think a lot of us, right? Boy, what a great job. How long have you been singing?
7 years.
Is this a professional career in making? What do you think? No? It could be. Great job. Thank you so much. Can we get a picture with you? Great.
Announcement by the President as read by the Secretary. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, were distributed by the Secretary on February 11th, 2020. As we recognize Zoya, it is now time for the rest of this evening's recognitions. Mr. Isola.
Yes, good evening and welcome to our monthly meeting of the Board of Education. It's such a wonderful thing when we have the opportunity to see so many community members, parents, guardians, and most importantly, our students and our staff that come out to celebrate the wonderful happenings that are going around. And it's this time, the room is so crowded because it's this time during the school year where we recognize our winter sports champions. And by the looks of this room, we did it pretty well, didn't we? So I'm excited to help recognize folks that did an outstanding job representing not only our school district while they were competing, but also on and off the competition arenas, the floors, the mats, whatever it may have been. So tonight we're lined up, all right. So where's Mr. Fury? Mr. Fiore, I'm going to ask that you come up and kind of MC the evening. I know we have our girls basketball and boys basketball, wrestling, and of course cheerleading from Hornet Pride, right? So, Mr. Bongiovanni?
Before we start handing out the certificates, one of the things I would ask you to do is all of these student athletes, and I'm sincere when I use that term, I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of the men and the women back there, and how many of them are already on a roll and high in their grades. So, not just athletes, but student athletes, and you make us proud in all ways. But what I'm going to ask the parents is, let's let all the teams go through before we start leaving. We'll have a brief recess so that everybody could get their quick picture and take off. But out of respect to all of them, let's not leave after the first team and the second team. Wait for everybody to go up. They all want to be ready. Thank you.
Have fun. I'll sit here.
First time I had to pick a mic up. Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening. This is a true honor for me this evening for multiple reasons, but first I'd like to start with thanking some people. The first is the Board of Education and Central Office for their commitment to these after-school programs. Without that commitment, it provides such social and emotional learning and well-being for our student athletes. And like Mr. Bongiovanni said, they are student athletes. They perform well in school and on the mat or on the court. So if we give the Board of Education and Central Office a round of applause, I would appreciate it. Second, I would like to thank all of you, the parents. You're their first coach. You're the person who's driving them to every event and the one bringing them around and being honestly their personal chauffeur. So once again, let's give the parents a nice round of applause. Okay. You got it. Sorry about that. Now what I would like to do is first of all, tell you about this season for Middle School North. Middle School North this year had 4 basketball teams, 2 girls basketball teams, 2 boys basketball teams, a wrestling team, and a cheerleading team. And every single one of those teams ended in the Monmouth County Championship or coming first in their cheerleading competition. So they're an amazing accomplishment. In my approximately 15 years as an AD, we've never had that much success in one season, so it really is tremendous. First, what I'm going to do is call up the wrestling coaches, Mr. Eccles and Mr. Knox, who are amazing. Not only are they amazing role models, but they're amazing coaches, and they led this wonderful team to an undefeated record. This is your stack of certificates for your wrestlers. They're in alphabetical order.
Weird using a mic. I'm so loud. I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I would like to thank the Board of Education and Mr. Fiore for making this happen. I would also like to thank the wrestlers. You guys had a great season, probably the best in North history as far as I'm concerned. We went undefeated. We were the division champions. We were the league champions. We were the tournament champions. And then we went on to having multiple kids win Monmouth County champs, dual county champs, which is Middlesex and Monmouth County. And we had 2 tri-county champions. All right, and to be a tri-county champion is a huge accomplishment. As many of you know, wrestling is a very one-on-one sport, but we came together as a team this year, and we really showed up. So give a big round of applause to the rest of the team. Just call them up when. Oh, yeah, sure. Joaquin, if everyone can hold the applause to the end. Joaquin Aguilera. Isaiah Ambos. Sebastian Andahar. Shane Angus. Guadalupe Arellano Santana. Jason Bennett. James Bradley. Jackson Brady. Brian Carlucci. Matthew Cartaginio. Enrique Castellanos. Yeah, all right, Enrique. Waylon Cavana. Dominic Centimol. Salvatore Citrullo. John Cole. Dane Colfer. Josh Colfer. Logan Correa. Christian Davis. Raymond DeFrancesco. Adam Deinhart. Julian Delpreet. Kyle DiGregorio. Christopher Elizondo. Dominic Esposito. Achilles Etene. Sean Etene. Anthony Falcone. Dominic Fiore III. Tyler Gadari. Tyler Going. Peter Goza. Aiden Grant. Gage Grant. Edward Grinvalski. Kyle Hildenbrand. Tanner Hodgins. Mason Holtman. Brody Kaplan. Joseph Kim. Joshua Kratansky. Aiden Kubasek. Jamin Kunkel. Alex Carizian. Jeffrey Matchnick. Dylan McGann. Robert Maravellis. Stephen McGuire. Tegan Merkel. Lawrence Morell. Sean Monge. Alexander Monahan. Nazareth Montanez. Anthony Moriano. Tyler Miranelli. D. Natalie. Rudy Nolasco Aguilar. Sawyer Ostroff. Vincent Percivali. Jameson Prince. Christopher Roselli. Zachary Samuel. Miguel Sampson. Michael Santomassino. William Stapleton. George Sintolis. Johnny Wallace. And Jake Zaltzman.
The next team I'm going to talk about is our cheerleading team, and I have a few words to say from their coaches. Mrs. Leonardis and Mrs. Adams unfortunately couldn't be here this evening. They both had family emergencies to attend to at the last second. Our team began the season cheering on the boys basketball team and then showing off their skills at the annual Middle School North Pep Rally. The girls went on to compete at the Liberty Lion Cheer Challenge competition in Jackson, where they won first place and best jumps in the whole competition. If that wasn't enough, in their second competition, they scored a 91 out of 100 points with a bid to the national competition in Disney. So they had an amazing season, and once again, I apologize about the coaches, but once again, they both had a family emergency. And at this time, they had an amazing captain for the cheerleading team. She's so talented that she actually, today, taught me something, and that was how to pronounce her name. So hopefully I get this right. Gina Obershaven, please come to the stage. I'd be in the hospital.
I guess I could say that we started off this season really strong, and we were all excited to definitely make the team. There were 59 girls trying out, and 27 of us made it. So that's an accomplishment to start off with. And the season was rough, but like Mr. Fury said, we came in first place in one of our competitions, and I couldn't be more proud to be their captain. Sophia Bryan, Bailey Citrullo, Natalia Chinowski, Catherine Clark, Lizzie Shimilewski, Grace Colucci, Jayla Davino, Isabella Federico, Allison Finnegan, she's not here, Caitlin Finnegan, Brooke Horan, Jordan Keeley, Jordan Kratansky, Leia LaRue, Gabriella Maldonado, Ava Metcalf, Vanessa Agno, Mia Ohana, Lacey O'Rourke, Mariah Sierra, Mia Totoro, and Samantha Weber.
Amazing job.
They know. They've done this before, they know. And you don't have to tell them to smile either. They know that too.
Square, make sure you're able to get a picture. All right, the shot clock is on. Nice job, nice job.
Next, I get to present our 8th grade boys basketball coach, Mr. Roberto, who is an amazing coach who's been coaching for as many years as I've been the AD. He's amazing. The kids love him. And once again, a huge accomplishment this year was the one team that beat them during the regular season. They ended up going to their house and beating them on their floor for the championship. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Board of Ed, Mr. Isola, Mr. Fiore, Mr. Farley for going to our finals game. We did have to go to Wall and beat them. It got a little bit tougher when one of our parents got a technical foul, but I won't mention who it was because everybody knows who it was, but that's okay. We had a great season. It was really awesome in the fact that the kids showed up to every practice. They worked hard, and they're athletes. They, football, basketball, soccer. They play a lot of different sports, and you see that when they come to the court. Most importantly, they're willing to work for each other, and I appreciate that. I hope they don't think this is the end when you have one of these culminating activities. It's for you guys. It's just the beginning. Whether you're going to high school or at the next level, you'll see that hard work and dedication will pay off. So congratulations, boys. I'll call you up. Nick Carnival, Ryan Costello, Aiden Diaz, Colin Ernest, Shane Fox, Ryan Herman, Zach Lavin, Aiden Manasso, Charles Marino, Chris Meehan. Who do we have? Let's see. Ethan Sloan, come on up. And one boy that's been with me since 6th grade, soccer, track, basketball, I don't even know, class, Landon Szymanski. And a few kids that didn't make it. First, I'll mention my oldest had an opportunity to coach. I had an opportunity to coach with him the whole season, and it was really special for me, so I appreciate that. And then the ones we missed, Ryan Costello, Andrew Simon, Chris Scully, DJ Orloff, and of course, fighting his own battle, Nico Puccieri. Thank you very much.
And last but not least, our 6th, 7th grade girls basketball team, who this year went undefeated and won the Monmouth County Championship. And their coach, Miss Cater, who's amazing as a coach, as a teacher, and as a player. One of the highest, if the highest scoring player, 1,000-point scorer. That's why I never, asked her to compete against me. But an amazing coach, amazing person, Mrs. Cater.
Thank you for that kind words, Mr. Fury. So this 6-7 girls basketball team is an amazingly talented, exceptionally group of young ladies. They averaged about 33 points per game, and just to give like a frame of reference, most 6-7 girls basketball games could end with a score of 12-10, and they were averaging 33 points per game. And that's because of their aggressive defensive skills, which fueled their offensive attacks. They worked well as a team. They cheered each other on. They picked each other up. But more importantly, they're more than just basketball players. They're talented on and off the court. They're peer mentors. They worked with our special class program students. They're a part of our gifted and talented programs. They are involved in multiple sports. A lot of the girls here tonight are also a part of the championship girls soccer team as well. So I'm thrilled you guys are all here to be honored tonight because you redefine what it means to be student athlete leaders. And moving forward, I hope you guys continue to be the exceptional student athletes that you are. And I'm honored to be the coach of the undefeated champions of the Monmouth Girls Basketball League. Congratulations on an amazing season. Gabby Rice? Yes. Julia Ernst? Danny Ferlenza? Chloe Glickman? Lexi Bella Rose Marino, Julia Portaro, Lily Ridgie, one of the captains, Olivia Shaughnessy, one of the captains, Isabella Suarez, and those that aren't here tonight are Sophia Woodford, Leah Rutledge, Kira Mullen, Madison Mancini, Lexi Klinger, and Sienna Hallam.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That concludes the recognitions. The board, as Mr. Bongiovanni said, will now take a brief recess so everyone can get home and do their homework. Exit the meeting room. The board will reconvene, and it is now time. The board is in need of an executive session. If we could have a motion and a second. The board will be going to an executive session. Please notice the motion noted in the agenda. The items this evening will be the annual legal update, an update on an ongoing personnel matter, and the routine HIB report. And negotiations of a personnel contract for the superintendent. The board is in executive session. The board is back in session. May we take the minutes? If I could have a mover and a second. Moved by Ms. Malley.
Second.
Second by Dr. Jeffrey. May I take the minutes around, sir?
Please.
Ms. Malley.
Yes.
Dr. Jeffrey.
Yes.
Mr. Gurman.
Yes.
Dr. Lowe.
Yes.
Mrs. Mangano.
Yes.
Mrs. Okerson.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Bongiovanni.
Yes.
The minutes are approved. 8 votes in favor, none opposed. The correspondence that the board has received will be noted for the record. It is now time for board president's comments. President of the board, Mr. Bongiovanni, your comments, sir.
I'll start out a little unusually for a change. We have some students here. This board recognizes the importance of education, and not just in this district, but education throughout. We know that you're seeking some type of role, some type of career in education. We wish you good luck, and thank you for being here tonight. Recognitions. It was wonderful having all the student athletes here tonight, and the term was used a couple of times, and it is so important. I had the opportunity to go talk to a lot of the students before they came out. You know, how many of them were on honor roll? How many of them were high grades? How many of them participated in other activities? So it was really wonderful having them there. The move to this building. Mr. Stanisak and his business office have already moved here, so that move is underway and going smoothly. Work is going on the other side of the hallway for the other part of the staff, but the business office has moved here, and from all reports, things seem to be going pretty smoothly there. One of the things I'd like to at least just recognize, only because we have had the discussion at this board table before about S2, I did notice that town council, that the town governing body had a motion, and they were very much in support of the fight against S2, the considerations that have come up from that too. So since this board has been active with our conversation about it, I want to at least recognize the fact that it was nice of the town council, who does not always take a position on educational matters, to understand how it impacts the citizens here, and to make a motion on that. During our committee briefs tonight, I'm sure Mrs. Malley will talk about it, but she and I had the opportunity to attend, along with Mr. Sanasak, the awards for sustainability awards the other day, and it was really very nice, and I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you talk about it in your report. Steam Tank, we know that each year we sit here just amazed at how many of our teams from our schools have qualified for Steam Tank, which is run through New Jersey School Boards Association. The wonderful ideas that these kids, and I don't use that term lightly, I mean, they're young children, and they come up with these incredible ideas. And this year we have had 33 some teams qualify themselves to participate in the districts. That doesn't mean that they'll all make Atlantic City, but based on what we've seen in the past, I'll bet you a lot of them do. So with that, I conclude my comments and turn it back to you.
Thank you. It is now time for Superintendent report. Mr. Rizzo, Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, sir, and good evening again. For part of my report tonight, the first item you'll see is progress towards district goals. As you all know, we have 4 goal areas. Of course, learner success, student achievement, followed by, I'm trying to get the order here, technology, culture and climate, and community interaction, I believe is the final one. Yep. So those are the 4 goal areas. Mr. Preston is pulling up the update onto the screen. You all have received earlier today an email. It is also part of the backup in the agenda for your review. I'm going to just ask that Mr. Preston just makes a few, highlights a few of the accomplishments rather than read through the multiple bullets and updates that exist in each of the areas. Mr. Preston, please.
Perfect. So while Ms. Engel is bringing back up our technology, we'll get to that goal area in a moment. We'll start with the perfect. Thank you very much. See, always timely. There are, again, no shortage of accomplishments. We're not going to be able to read those from the screen, but they are there. I do believe you have them in your email. Some of the highlights, I think, for advancing learning environments that emphasize personalized learning, student empowerment, and standards-aligned student growth. We launched this year our Wilson reading teachers, so we've been training about 10 teachers across the district. This is directly in response to some of the student performance data that we've gotten back, where we've identified certain gaps in our performances, and this is one of the ways that we're closing those gaps. We've seen great progress along the way. That work has been specifically led by our literacy supervisor, Jane Losinger, and collaborating with one of our special ed supervisors, or supervisor of special services, Scott Adlin. Within our online book club, so we had about 1,110 students participate in our online book club over the summer. With it's hard to quantify. It is actually out there. Ms. Losinger has it, but it was just an amazing amount of interaction that took place on that online platform. So really preventing that summer slide that can occur. Certainly didn't with these students. The screen went away, but I still have the screen here, so I'll keep on rolling my way through. You'll see some reference, not just in student learning, but also in terms of wellness, a connection to our School Moves program. Our occupational therapists have been leading a lot of that work under the direction of Director Fernandez. They are, it's really, again, it's about integrating physical movement and occupational therapies, but more preemptively and proactively. It's taken off across the district. We've also, we just shared the other night at Education Committee, not to preempt the briefs, but 2 pieces that are on here, which is a reforming of our gifted and talented placement procedures that expand the opportunities for all students within those enriched environments. Our Future Proof program, which has gone through a couple of different name changes, but essentially that's a connection out to the community, but it's in learner success as well, because it is about the authentic opportunities that students have to both learn, be assessed, and share their learning within the community. We have also continued to expand quite deeply the behaviors that support personalized learning. Again, that's in learner success, But again, Director Fernandez and I have collaborated on that. You saw Kristen Cater out here earlier as a coach. Not only is she a coach, but she's actually been working very directly with a lot of this work across the district and getting classrooms to pilot these behaviors that support personalized learning. And what we've begun to find is that those are really the intersection of both social emotional wellness and personalized learning. It's the behaviors that support personalized learning. Moving over to technology, again, just a quick outline. Again, referencing that online book club, it all starts to weave together and connect together. So while that leads to learner success, it's the technical platforms that provide students those opportunities to connect and learn together over the summer. Mr. Bongiovanni mentioned the STEAM tank, both the awards and now the students going into these next rounds. Our Future Ready distinctions, which, again, we've had no shortage of celebrations around some of those topics. We were interviewed and featured on RVN TV's New Perspective television show for Stretchers and Cell Cycle STEAM Tank. So not only are they winning, our STEAM Tank challenges are winning, but they're really taking their work on to the next level. Technology and authentic learning opportunities. We've had mentored students by Apple Education. Again, that can also be a connection to community interaction. Installed distributed new iPads for all the K-12s. We've upgraded our Power School version, which is our student information system. Enhanced additional parent reporting via the parent portal. We've created back-to-school night portals. Developed single sign-ons for students, making that sign-on once they get home and in class much easier. And implemented a new data contact interface in Power School. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but there are people who do. So if you have a question, she's over there. Yeah. I'm going to jump over climate. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'll go into climate and culture, and then, sir, I'll kick that one piece to you. Great. So in climate and culture, I think one of the biggest things, well, there's a few big things, but again, the District Wellness Committee has launched in Augusto. They just shared an update at the Education Committee meeting, but really, again, creating consistency both in our understanding and what our future practices are going to be around wellness. It's not, we can assume that it has a common understanding with everybody, but everybody defines it very differently, what is wellness. So we've been building a lot of consensus around that and what are our next steps. Again, there's a school moves piece that's up there, but I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Isola to talk about this next piece. I know it's a particular passion for him, which is our Student Advisory Council.
Yeah, so, and we've shared from the days before, and we're really excited as a district to be engaging. Again, we're a pre-K-8 school district. I think it's pretty commonplace for high school districts to be inclusive of student voice, whether it's a seat on, student representative seat on the board or in different capacities. But I'm really excited as a superintendent here in one of the finest pre-K-8 school districts in the state to have launched this committee this school year. And what it has done and meant so far has been really telling. The children that are involved, all middle school children, all 3 grades, their willingness to open up and talk. We have certainly created a culture and an environment within the committee that their voice not only counts, but it will be heard. And they really have enlightened us to things really quickly that I didn't have that lens until I heard it through the voice of the children. We work hard on school safety and security. Mr. Sanasak Mr. Abeline under his direction and our principals and building leadership and staff work hard to make sure we have safe schools. One of the things we heard, and you wouldn't think this through the student's lens, if they notice there's a door propped, they feel very uncomfortable. Now we do a great job to make sure there's no doors propped, don't get me wrong, but for a student to just come out and say that means that's weighing. Now we do it because we know the importance of security safety as an adult, but when we look at it through a different lens, that of the student and his or her voice, I think it really gets pronounced very clearly. So we're doing some really good work. We had an opportunity to go to a conference over in Long Branch with students. We saw a number of speakers there that were really, powerful, and the kids took away some good energy from that. Ms. Fernandez and I have talked about doing a combined committee meeting with the Student Advisory Council and the Wellness Committee. Do a combined student and adult agenda so that adults can hear that voice directly from the students, and the students can actually interact directly with folks that have been committed to making sure that culture and climate continues to improve. I think we have a strong culture and climate within our school district, but the minute we think it's good enough, we know we failed. So I think this has been a wonderful addition. We are going to involve them in the conversation that we had here at the dais in terms of discipline, the restorative models that we see out there now in middle school specifically. So student voice will help guide us and inform our decision-making through this group, and we're excited about it. We saw the power of them in strategic planning. The student voice was pretty cool and pretty powerful to have in that room as well. So, I applaud the board for helping administration take the lead with this, and even though we're a pre-K-8, giving opportunities for kids, our 5th grade program that we'll talk about soon, the Student Board of Education Day, our student government in 7th grade. These are opportunities that really help students take ownership of the school's climate and its culture, and we're excited about it. We're going to keep moving in that direction, and it is an accomplishment that I really possess great pride in. So, Mr. Preston, back to you.
So just a few more from the community interaction piece. Again, there's no shortage of bullet points, which were really just wonderful events that took place. But I want to call our attention over to the last page of the document that was shared out. We have had now, in addition to some of the parent nights and parent series done by the Pupil Services Department, we also launched the Parent University. The first parent university that we've done in a long time was launched, and it was quite a great success. We also, tomorrow, if you want to hear student voice, tomorrow night will be the 3rd consecutive year that the Howell Township Public Schools has been partnering with the Howell Optimist Club to offer the oratorical and essay contest. I'm excited to actually be a judge for that for the first time tomorrow night. So if you have something to do tomorrow night, cancel it. Come out and see these amazing kids present their. I'm sorry, what? Did I say cancel it? I mean, if you can be there, be there. Yeah, it's Middle School North. Middle School North, and I don't have the time, but we can get that.
5 o'clock.
Thank you, 5 o'clock. If you haven't had a chance to see them do their speeches, they are phenomenal. They do a wonderful job. I'm excited to judge, but it's going to be torture to have to make those decisions. They do a fantastic job. They really do share their voice. They have powerful topics that they always speak to. I did see not an entire speech because they have to submit their essay, not an entire speech, but a quick excerpt, and it was powerfully noted. So it should be a great event, and again, another wonderful community connection. Sir?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Preston. So, again, you have those reports both in your email and in your backup to this evening's agenda. Should you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to give our offices a call. We'll be happy to further explain or amplify any of the information that we did share with you and that you have on that full document. So we look forward to keeping the ball moving in terms of completing those goals as well as possible as we come to the second half of the school year. In addition to the progress towards district goals, I'd like to share some updates to our community and to our board. I also have sustainable grants, and I know that we'll be hearing about that. Really exciting news. But my contribution to that was, as I was working with Ms. Gray on putting together the document for the progress towards district goals, I said, you know what, don't print it. Let's email it. Let's put it in the backup. We don't need to make all those copies, so we reduced the copying process and the using of paper. Should anyone want a hard copy, again, don't hesitate. We'll get you the full document in print.
Thank you, Mr. Isola.
Thank you. There you go. All right, Ms. Malley, I appreciate that. So really exciting stuff happening in the area of sustainable and through Sustainable NJ. In Steam Tank, I think you heard that we had a really great first round. Many of our district submissions were advanced to the regional competition. At Aldridge School, there were 4 submissions that moved forward. Ardena had 5, Memorial had 5, Newberry had 9, Ramtown had 4, and Middle School South had 6. Some of what's confusing around this is we asked for a max of 5. There is a fiscal responsibility to this part too. I'm confused how Newberry and South went in excess of 5, but I'm sure Ms. Angle and Mr. Sanisak are working on solutions as we speak. But we are certainly pleased to see that many of our submissions being advanced to the regional competition, which is, Claire, do you have that date? March 21st over at Camp Evans in Wall, right next door to Howell. So it's a quick little commute over there. It's a really cool day. I had the opportunity to spend a couple hours there last year. Again, if you have time and you want to see the kids, defend their inventions, it's kind of a really cool day. We'll come back to that. Student Board of Education Day is ongoing now. We had our first assembly today. I believe Mr. Bongiovanni, Mrs. Malley were scheduled to be there along with Mr. Sanisak. I did have the chance to see Mark Bongiovanni, our board president, who said it went well. So I'm glad to see that's off and running, and the April meeting should prove to be beneficial not only for our students as a wonderful interactive learning experience or an authentic learning experience. I think it will be exciting and educational for all of us too. So we move forward with that. At the meeting in the April meeting where we have our Student Board of Education in place, at that actual meeting, we will do the wrap-up of last year's board motions from the student board. So it's been a full year cycle, and at that meeting, we'll update the board on the accomplishments of the work that previous Board of Education, Student Board of Education left for us. So there's a few items that are still open, and we're working through those now, and they've really left us some good work to do, and I think that's going well. But we'll share that out at the April meeting. Mr. Sanisak, any update on the administrative move that you'd like to share at this time or as part of the update? I know we're doing well.
Unfortunately, it's going well. We are on schedule, well under budget, and I'm sure everybody joins me in thanking our staff that's working so hard to do that. We should be moving, the business office will be finished moving tomorrow, and we should start moving the second week of March, hopefully early in that second week, the administrative side. It's going well, and it's going to be a boon to the taxpayers.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Sanisak. And I know the board shares my wishes of or statement of thanks to the men and women in the buildings and grounds and maintenance departments who have all pitched in. While there's been some folks spearheaded on the work downstairs, that means the folks out in the field are picking up the slack and making sure that we're keeping our buildings maintained at the right levels, and kudos to the entire department for that. Some important dates that are coming up, and then we'll conclude with a really important part of this update. We have our middle school plays coming out. I know the board always takes the opportunity to enjoy those. Ms. Gray should have emailed you by now. Should you wish to attend, please let her know. But Middle School North is doing the rendition of Legally Blonde, March 27th and March 28th. At Middle School South, they'll be doing Aladdin, and that'll be also the 26th, 27th, and they'll be doing the 28th as well. So you should have received the correspondence regarding that, but those are always exciting, nice to see the kids perform. They do such a great job. Monmouth County School Partnership for Wellness is hosting its first symposium for educators. As you know, in the fall, we hosted one for parents. It's March 19th at the Neptune PAC. The registration opened yesterday at noon. There's already 200 registrants. I'm excited to say that educators from across the county have been waiting for this, and it's a great opportunity for them to get some education around this area. So we're excited and it's moving well. We also will be doing our P3 Maker Expo evening, April 1st at Middle School South, so mark your calendars. Also a great community interaction, community engagement, and a great night of showing learner success. And then we have our, my monthly report of suspensions for January. There were 9 suspensions that were dispensed. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Preston for an update, as you know, Mr. Preston oversees our curriculum and instruction, and I'd ask that he share with our community and, of course, with our board, the work that went around the importance of Black History Month during the month of February. While the month is not concluded, Mr. Preston has a great deal of activities and lessons that he can share with us tonight. So thank you, Mr. Preston.
Absolutely. So similar to the board goals, I'm scrolling here through about 13 pages worth of different items that different schools have done throughout the month of February so far regarding Black History Month. And what I'm struck by is that many of these things are a teasing out or a pronouncing of the things that are occurring all throughout the school year, but making very pronounced and very prominent the things that they do here for Black History Month. One of the things that you certainly see is the wide collection of books that either are written by Black authors, highlight Black historical figures, or bring into the classroom conversations main characters who are also Black. Again, bringing out a level of prominence such that students who are Black can see themselves again reflected in the curriculum that they are experiencing every day. From that wide array and wide selection that we have through our independent reading libraries as well as our media center selection, we then create the media center specialists under Ms. Engel's direction, then also create media displays. So the authors, the characters, the books are on prominent display, gaining more exposure, creating more conversation, whether that's formal conversations through some of the designed lesson plans throughout the month, or some of the informal conversations, which sometimes can be some of the most powerful conversations as students are walking by and engaging in conversations with what they're seeing, picking up, and experiencing. One of my favorite topics, just because of my music background, is the amount of conversations around the cultural and musical contributions of many of the Black and African American historical figures. So we see that a lot through our music and our fine arts programs. Of course, there is lots of work and investigation, inquiry, presentation, and research done into the life and contributions of Martin Luther King. But what I think is also very interesting that many of the schools have taken to doing, and I remember Dr. Lowe sharing some of this, something similar during one of the education committee meetings in years past, is to look a little bit deeper into historical figures that are not quite as well known, say as a Rosa Parks or as Dr. Martin Luther King, and then creating school-wide clues, right? So using the announcements in the morning to talk about clues, and then students submit, they do some of their research, try to find out who it is that's being discussed over those announcements, and then share their answers back into the announcements, and then again, winners are selected. Actually reminded me of the exercise, the icebreaker that you had us do as a board during the last retreat. Again, scrolling through, students in some of the older grades, 5th grade, middle school, also taking on some more in-depth research and inquiry to historical figures of their choosing, who had done, again, whatever it was that maybe draws, this kind of connects in with the personal learning. So what are the pieces that I'm most interested in as a student? What were the contributions of African American Black culture to those things that I'm most interested in? And I think that's a key piece of a lot of the work that we do throughout Black History Month, in addition to the rest of the school year. So indulge me for a quick moment. I have to make sure that I can grab it back. In the Philadelphia Tribune on February 3rd, there was an article called Black History Month Matters, Why It's Still Relevant. An interesting piece that jumped out at me, and I think it speaks to that inquiry piece that students engage in throughout this month. we do it in other places, we do it in other ways, but specific to February and Black History Month. What they noted in this article is that Harvard historian Carter G. Woodson, I'm reading so I don't get it wrong, while doing some of his doctoral work, he saw how black people were underrepresented in the history books. And he was determined at that point to correct the marginalization, which he viewed as dangerous, and I think we could all agree in what that type of marginalization does. It's been a hot topic of conversation in many different ways over the past couple of years about different groups, but it started here with this group, with this man, seeking to correct an underrepresentation of individuals who are experiencing a curriculum, right? So they're not seeing themselves represented within that curriculum. He saw it in 1925 to correct that, and here we are today. So that's part of the legacy. I think he's one of those lesser known individuals. So I wanted to kind of highlight, take that opportunity, model what the students are doing, use some of their voice, and share that back with us for some of our review tonight.
And sir, that concludes our report this evening.
Thank you. It is now time for the first public comment.
Excuse me, Dr. Lowe would like to make a comment.
So, thank you. That was a really robust report. And with the progress to the district goals, just a suggestion, could we get it a little earlier? Because there's so much great stuff in here, and it's, you know, we had to rush through it quickly. And I think also format, so like 2019-20, so was this from January 1 of 19 up until now? So just like that timeline. I think I'm looking at, I think the last time how you reported it in a grid format, so like ongoing, completed. I felt that was very helpful for us. So just a suggestion for when we do it, like learner success is a goal, but I don't see it on here. So I'm just thinking, it's great material. I mean, I glanced
Right,
through it,
so-
and certainly I'll delve deeper and.
So we may be conflating our update on strategic plan goals.
Yeah, well, see, that's where I'm a little confused.
Right, so these are the district goals
Okay,
that are
these are
printed in,
district
right.
goals.
So
Okay.
we have a couple of set of goals, this is always a confusing
It
topic,
is.
even I gotta stop and think about it,
Right.
right? So there's board goals, right, that you folks, as the 9 of you, as the Board of Education, set annually and strive to accomplish those. Then we establish district goals, and those are also established as a team from the educational point of view, and those get printed on, each month with our agenda. Then we have our strategic goals, which are overarching, right, strategic planning goals, which are a part of a 5-year strategic plan, as you know, which we also report to you periodically on the updates of that. I think that's what you're visualizing when you say that,
Yes,
Dr. Lowe?
yes.
And then, of course, there's superintendent goals in some cases. So there's a lot of goals that are juggling. A lot of them overlap. But certainly in terms of format, we can look to sharpen that up. And also, this was meant to be a springboard tonight. You should take the opportunity to look at that and feel free to question us during between our next board meeting. We'll be happy to provide more substantial information because it's hard to capture it all, even in an update like this. So, but certainly we can keep this, we can push this to a discussion item next month. We'll give everyone an opportunity. It's not a one and done, it's ongoing, as you know from your work, that these are things that live and breathe and continue to exist. So while I reported and gave some updates, absolutely could have been
These are
earlier.
district goals.
Yep, on the district goals, but we can certainly continue to talk about district goals as we proceed prior to the June, July update that will be the conclusion of that.
And Mr. Sansak, before we go into public comment, I feel I'm kind of being remiss if I don't mention, you mentioned during your report about the upcoming Monmouth County Wellness Symposium for educators that's going to happen. On Friday, Mr. Isola, myself, and Mrs. Fernandez had the opportunity to attend a social and emotional learning conference that New Jersey school boards had. One of the speakers during the day was Bob Morrison, who is the director for Arts Ed of New Jersey, who did a really, really wonderful presentation that I can't capsulize here, but I'm just saying that it is one of the sessions that Mr. Isola then right away jumped on him and grabbed him and encouraged him to participate in the Wellness Day that you're doing. What I would recommend to any educator and certainly any board member here, that if you have the opportunity to attend that night, that conference, He's just one of a lot of very good speakers who are going to be there. So, as always, I talked about student athletes making us proud before. Mr. Azola, we continue to thank you for the work you're doing with that program. And with that, Mr. Sanisek.
It's now time for the first public comment. Whereas the Howell Township Board of Education determines the comments from the public may last 45 minutes and will be conducted in accordance with its bylaw 0164.1, and individuals may be limited to 3 minutes each. The officer with respect to time and decorum will be the president of the board, Mr. Mark Bongiovanni. May the floor be open, sir.
Anything?
Are there comments from the public at this time? Seeing none, may the floor be closed, sir.
Please.
It is now time for committee updates and liaison reports. Mr. Bongiovanni.
Tonight, I'm going to start from my left. Mr. Gurman.
Two things. One, I'd want to mention that I, along with a number of other board members, attended a school board leadership conference having to do with equity from the boardroom to the classroom. And it was just very clear to appreciate what we're doing and the direction we're heading about the importance of distinguishing between equity and equality. Different students, different schools, there are different needs, and the resources may be different that they need to achieve the goals that we want to attain. And the emphasis in this conference was about the importance of recognizing that you want to provide all the resources and with the rigor, the proper rigor, to give each of our students that opportunity to develop to their fullest. And I thought that was very helpful. And of course, it dovetails with everything that we just got in that our report with personalized learning. And just to cite one thing that was mentioned by Mr. Preston that came up at the last Education Committee meeting was the point about perhaps changing the criteria sometimes for entrance into the G&T program by recognizing at different stages in students' lives that they are ready to move on to something with more rigor. And I also know that it's come up that we're looking across the board at some students who perhaps haven't had the same advantages of other students, to make sure that they are given these same opportunities with equity to allow them to achieve the fullest level of success. So I commend the district. I know this is one of our goals, and I just thought it was helpful for me as one board member to frame things a little differently by appreciating how important equity is and how we use that as a lens on how we may want to look at things. My other comment is the Legislative Advocacy Committee, it will hold its next meeting on March 12th at 7 o'clock. 7 p.m., of course.
Thank you. Mr. Thor is not here, obviously, and Mr. Thor chairs policy, so I don't know if there was anybody else in policy who attended any of the meetings who wants to comment, but regardless, not surprisingly, Mr. Miller noticed on the agenda that the two policies that were for first reading at our last meeting are not on the agenda this time around. Any comment on why that might not be there, or? I guess I'm looking at you. The two policies that were there for our first reading at our last board meeting were not on tonight's agenda. Reason for that, or?
They were on for first read last month.
First reading.
So they weren't,
Right, and then normally they go on for second read. No, normally it just goes right on for a second read, unless there was changes.
We'll address that.
We'll look to move those to the next meeting.
We'll address it for the next meeting.
Thank you.
No.
That's fine. We'll move them to the next meeting. Mrs. Malley.
Okay, on February 12th, we had a joint meeting of Operations and Finance, and Mr. Miller and I opened the meeting. All members introduced themselves. And then Mr. Sanisek started the meeting off with a discussion on cybersecurity. Mr. Michael Saba?
Yes.
Good job. Richland Knowles was present for the meeting to discuss our present coverage and additional coverage for the future. Given the current attention to school cyber threats, both Mr. Miller and I wanted to evaluate our cyber coverage and the protection to get a better understanding prior to the renewal process. Mr. Saba passed out a handout of an overview of the cyber suite of products available. The terms and exclusions were discussed. We currently have a $1 million aggregate limit with $10,000 per occurrence. Mr. Sanasak asked Mr. Saba if our coverage is comparable to other districts, and the answer was yes. Okay, then Ms. Engel and Mr. Aquino? That's not right, is it? It is? Oh, okay. Mr. Aquino spoke to the committees about what is in place presently to avoid cyber breaches. We currently have a multi-point backup system within the district. The committee discussed that our third-party vendors, who presently do work for us on contract, should be up to industry standards with security measures for our data. Then we moved on to the transportation. We talked about the stop arm cameras and the violations. The current law states that the camera cannot be the witness. Procedure presently is the driver calls in the violation to the transportation office. The office notes the time of violation so the camera film on the bus can be searched, and the police department will then review the video. Right now, we're looking at the cost to outfit the full fleet, which is approximately going to be $120,000. And it was suggested that once the tickets are starting to be issued to the violators, that we can then phase the cameras installed on the fleet. Instead of trying to do it all at once, maybe have a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan to get all of the buses with the cameras on there. Once the tickets, yes.
Can I ask a question? Who do the fines go to?
That's coming up next.
Okay.
All right, that's the next thing that we asked, is that the Board of Ed, if we can request funding through the township for the cameras, because the township is going to be the ones collecting the fines. So that is something that's going to be in negotiation, whether we can come up with a shared service agreement with the cost of the cameras themselves. Ms. Tara Vasquez, the transportation supervisor, stated that we need 4 54-passenger buses and 3 vans that are going to be aging out this year, so we will have to discuss that further and the cost of replacing those. Okay. Last thing that we talked about, which is the most exciting thing, as Mr. Bongiovanni mentioned, he and I attended a brunch last week with the NJEA Sustainable Grants, and our district, they awarded 30 $2,000 grants, out of which 10 came to this district. And most of them were for bottle fill stations. So pretty much every single one of our schools is now going to have bottle fill stations in there because of these grants that we've gotten, which is very exciting. And they awarded 12 $10,000 grants, 2 of which came to Howell. Memorial School has Wellness Way, which I actually saw today. I was there for the Student Board of Ed, so I got to tour Wellness Way, which is really, it's just a beautiful area for the students and the staff to use. And they have gotten $10,000 now to add on more features. One of them is going to be a greenhouse room, and they're going to be working with that. They have a mindfulness room, which is really lovely ambiance for meditating, and then they have an indoor recess area. It's really quite something to see. So they got a grant to continue their work there. And the other $10,000 grant went to Middle School South to complete work on their greenhouse, which is very exciting. And they're going to be working with Howell Community Gardens. They have an agreement already where they're going to set up, where they're going to grow things at the South greenhouse, and then they're going to donate what they grow to the Howell Community Gardens, which will then go to the Howell Food Bank. So we'll be helping with the community and getting fresh produce to our community in need. So that's really wonderful. And after that, the minutes were approved, and that concludes that report. But I do have to say one more thing, Mr. Preston. Tomorrow evening, as much as I would love to go see the Optimist Club, I have to go to Middle School South because they're having their charity student-teacher basketball game, so it's very exciting. So if you If you can't get to the Optimist Club, or if you want to go to both, come on over and help the charity. I believe it's the Francis Foundation, which is a great organization, and it's all in good fun for the students to play the teachers. So thank you very much. That's it.
Questions, comments?
I just want to thank Heroes, and also I believe that that Lindsay deserves a lot of credit for helping.
Oh, thank you so much.
So let me recognize Lindsay for her help in that.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffrey. You're absolutely right. Lindsay Treadle did a lot of the legwork. You always have to have a point person, and I say that literally because in Sustainable NJ we do keep track of points, but she's actually a vital person, keeping all of the points up to date, making sure all the paperwork is done and everything is submitted in a timely manner for these grants. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that.
And if I could just mention, of course, something, and that is that the wellness way that you mentioned is not only for the students, but also for faculty and staff, which again is one of our primary concerns as well, the well-being of all of our people in our school community.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we heard today that they've been using it after school. That's
Yes.
great.
Mhm.
Dr. Lowe?
Okay, I want to first report on, we had a professional learning committee meeting this afternoon. And so on our agenda for reorganization, the board retreat date was July 25th. And so what I first wanted to talk about is we'd like to try to do that retreat August 1st, and wanted to see what the consensus was of the board. We wanted full board participation if possible.
In the morning?
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
So like 8 to 1 type thing? Because I'm leaving middle of the day, but like,
Be out of town. at 9.
Yeah, in the morning.
We
kinda
are generally concluded by like noon, 12:30.
okay.
Yeah, I have to just check my calendar. I'll know tomorrow.
We may have to.
Ms.
we
Lowe,
may
if
have
it's your
to
pleasure, Dr. Lowe, if it's your pleasure, of course, Mr. Bongiovanni, we could send out either Teresa or
Yeah,
Katie
do the
could
poll.
just send out a little poll, and we could get back to both the chair and the board president for a final. And then if it's consensus that August 1st works, Mr. Sanisak, of course, will take care of the renoticing and that stuff. Okay?
Okay, yeah, that's a
Thank
great
you.
idea.
Thank you, Madam
And
Chair.
so some of the particular topics we discussed were, of course, board goals, because we'll be, September, we start looking at board goals, review of the board code of practices. Got a chance to look at that today. Well, I share that a lot with people I'm working with. Go to our website and look at how we work. And so just a good time. I think that's something we always should review, because we are a very good board, good hardworking board. The intersection of equity and SEL, which was a theme at the conference that I'll talk a little bit about in DC, the Equity Summit, that it dovetails. Equity isn't new and SEL isn't new. It's just that because of things that are happening, but there's a clear integration between those two. And then look and the equity update. So there are no questions there. We'll do the poll. I did want to just briefly touch on the Equity Summit that National School Boards, this is their 5th year, and each year the numbers increase. I think from last year they had 400, they had 600 this year, and it's really great to see the work that's really happening across the country on the topic of equity. And as Larry said, and Al was at the regional conference that our New Jersey school boards put on, that equity and equality is not the same. We have a one-to-one initiative, so every student has a document, but equity is really giving every student what they need. So like when you use the example, one particular district, it's a large district, they do a per pupil expenditure. So every building gets the same amount. However, through their diving and looking at equity issues and looking at that equity lens, they found there were 3 or 4 schools that needed more. So as a former building principal, you never want to give up your money, but they had to. And it was very clear because there were so gaps that just stood out very clearly with resources in schools that had a lot of issues. So there were, just several things there that we took a look at. Most of it, and that's why we'd like to really spend time at the retreat to talk about it, because it's board and governance, and so we really do need to have a clear understanding of what that means, and so that we look at everything from top to bottom. We really want to look at that with that equity lens to ensure that students get it with their needs. But, like I said, I'm going to write up this report because there's so much good information, and really encourage board members. Like, for example, I gave a lot of information to Mr. Preston and Bruce in regards to policy for equity, looking at that. And the biggest issue is, it is not a Dr. Lowe issue. It is a issue for the country. It's not a black-white issue. It's not a, it's an issue, clearly. And that was so clearly stated when you see states across the nation that are taking a look at whether they're predominantly black, Hispanic, whatever, predominantly white, really taking a look at it. And so that was interesting, looking at the policies and about procedures. When you talked about that rigorous curriculum, a rigorous curriculum must be robust, inclusive, diverse, and should touch and include every single child. And we talked a little bit about that today, curriculum work and curriculum review with our materials and, you know, what we put in front of students. So tons of great information, the equity policy checklist, and so more ongoing information. But it's really important as a board that we fully understand what this means so that we can look at that lens. And it's ongoing work. Most of these districts have been at it for a while because it's not new. It's federally driven. And so like at our meeting we had with our own school boards, people were like, well, what is this? We're not doing this. But it's that equity report that last year was approved and discussed. And so it's been going on for a while, but a heightened emphasis has been put on it from the Department of Ed, you know, as they should. So more information to follow. But definitely for next year, I definitely encourage you to attend. But I will write all this up. Several workshops when we looked at inclusive recruiting males of color and the issue that diversity is important for all. We've known this is long-standing research that's important to have that reflection of your students. But recent research that I think I shared with you, Bruce, is that they polled white students and they prefer to have a person that doesn't look like them, which was very interesting. So it's a benefit. Diversity is important for all. So just lots of great information that I will write up and share, which is definitely too much. But I think for our retreat, we'll have several topics, but it's important that we as a full board drive the process of equity. It'll impact every single thing we do.
Thank you very much. It's interesting, as you said, this was either the third or fourth year that National did their equity conference, and the person who really pushed National to do that was at the time John Tuttle, who was the president of National School Boards that year, who was from a rural part of Oklahoma, not necessarily the person who in your mind you say, oh, equity would be a big issue to him. You know, and you're right.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a race issue. It's not just it's wealth. It's all of those things combined. But John, great guy from Oklahoma, he was the guy who really pushed National to hold that conference. Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Ms. Malley, for giving our joint committee report. The next Finance Committee meeting is on Wednesday, February 26th at 7 p.m. I attended a joint Board of Ed, Howell Alliance, and Howell Police Department Community Health and Wellness Program on vaping. What You Know and What You Need to Know by Nikki Francis of Wellspring Prevention. She did a great presentation. She was at the Monmouth County Wellness Prevention, and so she did it at Middle School South the other evening, and she did a great thing. They have additional workshops coming up, so I encourage you all to look into that and attend them. They have some really great presenters.
At my high school, it was so informative. Like, we're in such trouble when these kids
Yeah,
get there.
and
but
I believe
she
she
was very good.
also came to our students and presented. She's a great presenter.
She did, Mr. Miller, and you're right on. She is a wonderful presenter, a great friend of educators, and she'll be one of our featured presenters at the March 19th Mental Health Symposium. So educators, you know, I hope you're listening and get them on out and make it meaningful. We're already over 200, and a lot of people are already signed up for Nikki's presentation, so.
Yeah, she's great. I also attended the New Jersey School Board Association Equity Program with Dr. Lowe and Mr. Gurman. The next Monmouth County School Board Association meeting is going to be Monday, March 2nd at Southern in Richmond Center, and it's going to be the annual 8th grade dialogue, which we always look forward to hearing from the 8th grade students on their perspective of their district and their academics. Finally, on behalf of the New Jersey School Board Association, we want to congratulate Mrs. Malley on her appointment to Vice President of Legislation for Monmouth County School Boards.
Wow. Very nice.
Dr. Jeffrey.
The Labor Committee has not met, and we're still waiting for the union to send out the demand for negotiation.
Okay.
Which should be coming soon.
Anything else for the good of the board?
No.
Okay, great. Mrs. Okerson.
So the Education Committee did meet on last Wednesday, and Mr. Preston did speak about a lot of what went on there, but I'll try to go back over it. We set our committee goals for this year to continue to deepen the deliberate practice, to make personalized learning a reality, and then to explicitly align the Education Committee work to support the strategic plan goals. We heard an update on the District Wellness Committee. They began with the what is social and emotional learning and developed goals in 4 different focus areas with action steps after those goals. They were very careful to make sure that everyone was represented on the district level committee. Mr. Preston spoke about the new Future Proof program, which will leverage tomorrow's problems as today's learning, so inviting community members to submit their 10-year problems that they believe are coming in their industry and having the students help them solve it. And then the Gifted and Talented program Project Plus placement was discussed, and students were going to have the opportunity to stay in Plus as it is now, but also to either take math or ELA, which is not currently an option. This will begin with the new incoming 5th graders that will all be, the current 5th graders, incoming 6th graders. They will all be tested through the SAGES exam at some point during the year. And then after we had talked about when we're going to meet in the future, and then we did have some members of the community attend to discuss the LGBTQ inclusive education legislation. And basically, the law requires the integration of contributions made by LGBTQ plus individuals as it does for individuals with disabilities and any other historically marginalized group, basically looking for every student, regardless of their background, to see themselves inside our curriculum.
For those of us who've sat on education for an awful long time, the conversation that took place around the Project Plus was really very exciting to hear. I mean, that G&T has been a conversation for as many years as I can remember. So it was really wonderful to hear that the changes, and for anybody on the board who isn't familiar with exactly what some of those changes might be, I'd encourage you to talk to Mr. Preston and get some details on that.
Sir, in the briefs, in the minutes, in the actual agenda, we linked in the PowerPoints from the Wellness Committee update, from the Future Proof document, and from the Project Plus PowerPoint, and then also the law requirements on the LGBTQ inclusive instruction mandates.
Thank you very much. Anybody? Ms. Mangano?
Community interactions hasn't met. We're going to be contacting the school. We're going to kind of try to go around the school in different areas and try to hit the different populations and try to bring people out more and try to see if we can get a better outcome.
Great idea.
And Ms. Mangano, if I may just support your update there, I'm really pleased to inform you, I know you and I spoke about it, that Mr. Howard will be joining us to talk about the Future Proof program that you just heard briefly from education, because that is really a intersection of learning and community engagement. So I'm really pleased that he's going to be available to come out and speak through that with our committee as well.
Mr. Stanisak.
That concludes committee and liaison reports. It is now time for discussion. One discussion item on this evening, the preschool tuition.
Mr. Isola, preschool tuition, would you like to address that? Would you like to bring that up?
Sure. Well, I'll frame it. The conversation came up, and I think Mr. Stanisak has some information that may help the dialogue along in just a second. And I did give my sheet to him. Our last increase in so we have preschool that is required. What's that? Oh, you need this? Yeah. I'm now giving a second copy to Mr. Stanisak, so he's readily available. So with that being said, we have our preschool program. What's that?
I was trying to get Mr. Harvey to get it for me, but he was daydreaming.
So we have our preschool program. Part of the preschool program, we have half-day tuition-based students. We need typical peers that help us run a meaningful program for our preschool handicapped students, or disabled students, I should say. So that portion of it is tuition-based. We have been on a fixed tuition since, I believe, the 2015. 2015-16 was the last school year that we had an increase. Mr. Sanasak, we collected some data. Mrs. Kindle and Ms. Fernandez collected some data for our analysis, so I'll ask that Mr. Sanasak shares that with the board at this time.
We have 80 slots, if you will, in the classrooms that provide for the regularly achieving peers to be in the classroom with the pre-K students. And we started out prior to 15-16, it was $2,500. We raised it to $2,625 in 15-16. In evaluating market rates, that is well below a third, if not a quarter of the rate that a parent would pay for a program, and obviously chauvinistically, a program that's not as good as ours. The students have the opportunity. We always have oversubscribed. We always have to have a lottery. We pick lots from a hat to see which children will be offered the spot for that price. We've surveyed many of the other schools. Some are as high as $7,500. Some of the private schools are $10,000. That's for full day or almost full day. When we say full in part, it's kind of tough to say half full in part because everybody has different hours and everybody addresses it differently. But, the idea that it is still a blessing to the parents that do get the lottery. We always have a waiting list, and it's been since 15-16 that we haven't raised the prices. So it is for discussion this evening to increase that tuition to $3,200. That will put us just slightly above the two lowest, which are Marlborough and Manalapan. They run a similar program in their schools, but schools in non-public schools in Manalapan and Marlborough charge in excess of $7,000 to $8,000. So it is still a benefit to those parents that do win the lottery, but it's not quite as big of a subsidy that the district is giving to those parents as compared to a market rate. I don't want to use any names of programs around, but there's chains, there's franchises, and there's privates, and they're all triple, if not 4 times the cost of what we're charging for that seat in our wonderful pre-K program.
Mr. Sanasak, I believe, and correct me based on our little review, that would remain the lowest tuition rate in Howell Township.
In Howell, yes, it would. We would still be the lowest in Howell. The only ones lower than us would be the public school in Manalapan and Marlborough, and they're not available to Howell residents anyway because they only make it available to their residents.
Right.
So the recommendation this evening for discussion would be to raise that tuition to $3,200. We still believe we'll fill all the seats, and we still believe we'll have a waiting list and have a lottery to have those students.
Thank you very much. Open it up to the board. Comments, questions?
One, I hate to sound like a business major or businessman, but what I am, but how much does this cost us, or is it break even, or what's the?
Well, it's difficult to say what it would cost us because our program would not be in compliance if we didn't have the like achieving or the regularly achieving peers. In the past, we had a program and we actually made it a field trip 1 day a week to go to another pre-K. If we were to take a draconian approach, if we didn't do it, we'd pay for private school for tuition for every identified student. I don't think we would ever do that. But the what if we didn't do it cost is very difficult to say because it would have to be some assumptions and summations. So does that answer your question?
Not really, but I sort of see. I mean, are we subsidizing the students, or are we breaking even, or are we?
It's kind of symbiotic, if you will. It's not a straight business evaluation, and believe me, I understand your question because I think I had that conversation today with Mr. Gurman. When he was asking me about it. we need these students for our program to be within code, and Ms. Fernandez could probably speak better about it, but they have to have the experience of those, but there are other ways to provide it. This is one way that we can kind of provide it to 80 lucky parents with, or unless they're siblings, but 80 students within the district, but still offset some of the cost of the program. It still costs us far more than that to run the whole program, but their seat doesn't necessarily cost us X, Y, or Z in an evaluation. Does that answer it a little better?
Okay, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else?
So I just have a question. What's the difference between our program in Manalapan and Marlboro that they're lower than what we have?
I believe they haven't raised their price yet. Manalapan is $27.50. So they're very close to us, and they may well raise it for next year as well.
My concern is that there would be some kids that wouldn't be able to come due to the affordability, raising that price. I understand there's a reason to raise the price that hasn't been raised, but there's always that concern that we're talking
And
about
it's-
equity and quality and all that stuff, that there may be children that may not be able to afford that.
But for us, they'd be paying 7 to 10 in a private, though. That's kind of the mindset.
I understand that part. That's just my opinion.
Dr. Lowe?
No,
I'm
that's a
sorry.
good question
Oh.
to ask.
Seeing no other questions, why don't you take it around?
Okay.
Take a
to place-
poll. Somebody needs to make a motion and then take it around. I'll make a motion that we increase the amount.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Bongiovanni. Would you like me to take it around? This is
to add it onto the agenda.
This is to add A1 to the agenda.
Right.
Mr. Bongiovanni.
Yes.
Dr. Jeffrey.
Yes.
Mr. Gurman.
Yes.
Dr. Lowe.
Yes.
Mrs. Malley.
Yes.
Mrs. Mangano.
No.
Mrs. Okerson.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
A1 is on the agenda, 7 votes in favor, 1 vote opposed. Thank you. That ends discussion items unless there's another one? That
Nope.
was all I had?
That's it.
It is now time for the consent agenda. May we take the consent agenda with A1?
Please do.
Do we have a mover and a seconder?
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Malley. I'm sorry, I missed the second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. May I take that around, sir?
Please do.
Ms. Malley.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Gurman.
Yes.
Dr. Jeffrey.
Yes.
Dr. Lowe.
Yes.
Mrs. Mangano.
Yes, except for A1.
Thank you. Mrs. Okerson.
Yes.
Mr. Bongiovanni.
Yes.
The consent agenda and A1 are approved. 8 votes in favor, none opposed on all of the consent agenda except for A1, which is 7 votes in favor, 1 opposed. They all pass. May we take the second public comment, sir?
Please do.
Whereas that Township Board of Education determines the comments may last 45 minutes, and they will be conducted in accordance with bylaw 0164.1, and individuals may be limited to 3 minutes each. The officer with respect to time and decorum will be the president of the board, Mr. Bongiovanni. With your permission, may the floor be opened.
Please.
Are there comments at this time? Seeing none, may the floor be closed.
Please do.
Move it.
Second.
The board is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Mark, can I ask you